Today's episode is powered by HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. As they stand in solidarity with the Black community and everyone fighting for racial and food justice, HelloFresh is proud to support Black voices and to affirm that Black lives matter today and every day.
Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C. On this show, you hear from the voices of dynamic Black people and people of color in the agriculture, food justice, and healing space as they share empowering food narratives and perspectives that stem from the land, all while exemplifying the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting on Full Service Radio. So today's show, I have a very special guest, Pashon Murray. She is the founder of Detroit Dirt, the leading model of organic waste recovery and reuse, with a mission to create a zero waste mindset throughout communities and drive forward a low carbon economy. Detroit Dirt has partnered with General Motors, the Detroit Zoo, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and others to pick up food waste and manure to reuse and create rich soil. Pashon and her company have been featured in numerous media outlets, from Forbes to Entrepreneur, and of course, the most amazing edible activist platform, because I got to toss this out there too, right? So, Pashon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here and to connect with you.
So dope. Listen. So when I set out to do my edible activist tour, I think it was back in 2017 to Detroit, right? I was doing my due diligence, my research, didn't really know anyone there. So I was, again, doing my research. And so like I'm on the internet and I'm Googling like, where are the dope Black activist growers, those in the ag space. And so I come across this site. And I see like this beautiful, like Black woman with impeccable style, a shovel standing in front of a pile of dirt. And that's when I learned about Detroit Dirt. And I was like, yo, where is she? I got to meet her. Okay. I was completely blown away to see such a dynamic sister, okay, with an incredible mission. And I'm just so glad that we connected, Pashon. I've had the opportunity to be in your space, to tour the facility where you do the production, all of that. And we've had the opportunity just to hang out and kick it in Detroit. Like Pashon provided me like my very first like real Detroit experience. So I got the whole shebang, but just on top of like your environmental work in Detroit Dirt, like you're incredible. And I'm so glad we crossed paths. So you are my friend. And, but you are going to start off the show by like, what up though? Because I know that's a Detroit thing.
What up though? And I am equally grateful for our missions to have crossed paths and for us to have a friendship. And I'm very proud of the progress that you've made. Just watching you evolve has been a blessing. So continued success to you.
Warms my heart. So Pashon, this entrepreneur space is nothing new to you. The land is nothing new to you. You were actually exposed to this early on due to your father's, landscaping business, going to Mississippi, being on farmland. You have family that owns farmland. And so I just want to start off with that because some of the times we have a mix. We have a mix of folks who are just getting into this space, whether they are entrepreneurs, whether they are a new grower, whether they just started farming and they're just exposed to it, even if they have a long-standing history with the land, like through their family. But then there are folks like you that's just like, nah, I've seen this coming up, And so I just want to just spend a few moments on just, painting that picture for us of what it was like coming up and being around your dad's business and being on that farmland and how you connected to the land way before Detroit Dirt.
Yes. I always say the creator is always at work, because clearly there was a purpose and path or a journey that was set out in front of my life, without me truly realizing as a young child. I didn't fully evolve into that purpose until we started Detroit Dirt. But just to paint a picture of my childhood, and describe some of the pivotal moments. My dad had a contracting company that he basically had a maintenance and service company. And so he had contracts with the city and the county. And the most significant thing about that was he had these seasonal contracts where I was able to jump in and out of the truck with him, and just really observe what he was doing in the community. And he really was a man of the community and cleaning it all at the same time. And those trips to the landfills, so he had, contracts for waste removal and diversion. And so going to the landfills as a young child, the landfill never really made sense to me even then, with him, and other contractors or companies dumping waste in landfills. The other opportunity I had was watching him and a crew of guys have, or partake in interior demolition, snow plowing, as well as industrial mowing of interstates and lots. So he had some dealings with housing commission as well, boarding up homes. But the most significant thing that sticks out is the trips to the landfills, simply because I had no idea one day that I would even be involved with creating solutions around materials management and waste materials. And then my family actually, my mother is from the Deltas, her family, and then my dad is from the outside of the Jackson area, but we would go to Mississippi probably twice a year, from about first grade through seventh grade. Every spring break, I would go to Mississippi, and the beauty in that was connecting back to my roots, the South, having an understanding of the migration, but more importantly, watching my grandfather be one with nature on that farm, and how he could basically communicate with the cows. He understood if an animal was sick, he knew the land. And of course, my father grew up farming and growing everything that you could possibly imagine, from greens to crowder peas to making sure that the cellars were right in the ground where they stored meat. But, I got a chance to experience it as a young child, with part of the farm still functioning. But just having my ancestor present, he's no longer with us, but just watching him be one with nature was impactful. It was awe-inspiring and astounding as a child. But those two moments in life, like the trips to the landfills, as well as seeing my grandfather be one with nature. And then the most impactful as an adult was I had a chance to witness Grand Rapids invest hundreds of millions of dollars in building a more efficient city according to green building practices and green infrastructure. And that was really those three key components in my life inspired me to, land in the space that I'm in currently.
So here you are at this tender age as this like baby environmentalist and just didn't even know it. Didn't even know it.
Didn't even know it.
Wow, that's incredible. All right, so fast forward, we have Detroit Dirt, right?
Hmm.
And I this story just selfishly, guys, so selfishly because I've heard Pashon's story and I've been in her presence, and so I'm all in. I'm all in. But you're in this place of where, like, listen, there's some businesses who aren't making this food waste connection. Like I've seen this coming up. I've gone to the landfills, but what are people doing with their food? What is the automotive business? What are they doing with their food? What are these other companies doing with their food waste specifically, right? And so I definitely want to tap into the Detroit Dirt itself, the business itself, but more specifically the business model, because we aren't talking just an ordinary, not to discredit anybody who has composting businesses, because shout out to the composting businesses out there, but like this is an actual, like there is a strategic model behind Detroit Dirt. But before we dig into that just a bit, no pun intended, um, for an everyday listener, let's just compost. Like let's, because I want to catch that everyday listener might be like, what the heck is compost? What are they talking about? So just so we can catch them up to speed, because it's also learning and education. Let's just have you define what composting is and the purpose of it, and then we'll bridge into your business and the model that you have for it.
Sure. So composting is organic matter. It's the decomposition of organic matter. So if you could imagine coffee grounds, spent grain from breweries or liquor distributors who actually make liquor or beer, the coffee grounds that come from your coffee shop or your kitchen, egg shells, any type of vegetables, but really all food can be composted. It's just that meat and bones are required to have a different process when breaking that food down to its simple form. But composting is really about the organic matter of the world. And if you could just imagine in the forests, in the jungles, when those leaves fall on the ground, or when animal manure is in the ground, anything that's natural that is in a decomposed state, we really, as is humanity, has some of us have taken things for granted, such as composting. But really, it's a process of taking organic matter, breaking it down, and making byproducts such as soil amendments. So, with those vegetables, with those leaves, the veg would represent the green, the cardboards and papers and leaves would represent the brown. So you have this green and brown mixture or ratio, depending on what kind of compost or soil amendment or fertilizer that you would like to produce. But it's taking food, organic food waste, and accelerating a process to make a byproduct, which is a soil amendment. And, it's one of those things where at the beginning of civilization or throughout civilization, it's something that farmers and communities took pride in because that was their way of sustaining and remediating their soils. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, there was a carbon cycle that's involved with that. Instead of sending that food waste to the landfill, if you recycle or process it properly, you can reduce those greenhouse gases. You can stop that carbon from escaping and putting it in the soil where it truly belongs. So it definitely is very important when we look at the connection between food waste and climate, right? So it's very important that we process these materials properly and make byproducts with them.
So I wish this was as easy as it's playing out in my mind. I just envision you sitting at this corporate space, right? General Motors, the Detroit Zoo, saying, "How about you just hand me over that manure or that food waste?" Because I got some things I need to do with this, okay? I know that's not, maybe that's how the story started, but like, let's talk like the birth of Detroit Dirt in the model that's behind it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's so fun because it's not a traditional method of business or a traditional model, if you will, because I always had in mind the economics, as well as the industry as a whole, like what we were truly wanting to impact. And so what happened was, as I came out of the consulting and lobbying world of, really being sponsored to lobby to go back and forth to DC, fighting for climate resiliency, I started meeting urban farmers in Detroit. Well, at that time that I met some of the urban farmers who were looking at pushing their movement and revitalizing a local economy, the automotive community was pushing zero waste landfill free. And so the timing was perfect. I look at it as a spiritual awakening. What happened in my mind is I began to strategize and think about what resources we did not have access to in the city. Most of the time, when people order soil or compost, they're ordering it for 20, 30 miles outside of the city, or they're ordering, small volumes of material. And so I thought, how do we take our own resources, such as food waste and yard waste, and compost or, process that locally? So the other gentleman who actually co-founded Detroit Dirt with me was an urban farmer, and he was, composting on a very small scale for his urban farm. But, my upbringing with going to the landfills, being, familiar with the footprint of waste and how most cities truck that waste 20, 30 miles outside the city or to a landfill, or they burn it in an incinerator. And we have an incinerator. We had one that was recently shut down last year, which was a huge accomplishment for all of the activists in the environmental justice space,
Mm-hmm.
because we know that landfills and incinerators contribute to cancers and other health issues such as asthma and things of that nature. So I really wanted to be on the forefront and truly impact. And when I began to research and look at what the automotive community was doing around zero waste, and then the urban farmers, I thought, if I could join forces with Greg and we could actually create a model that was sustainable, that was socially, economically, and environmentally impactful, we could shift the culture as well as impact the environment. And so we just started trying to figure out, first and foremost, where would we be able to actually accomplish this as far as land? There's a lot of contaminated soils throughout the city, so I wanted to be really careful about that. And so through my research and building relationships in the community within the network, I found out that there was some land that a farm used to actually, I guess they had a farm there like 40, 50 years ago. And the people who actually owned the land, they had land all up and down the rail line. And so we found a place that we could possibly compost. And then Greg was already talking to the zoo about using their manure and having other farmers utilize the herbivore manure from the zoo. But I had to find some key stakeholders in the community that would allow us to, take their organic waste for two reasons. One, to stop it from going to the landfills, but also to show or reflect to the community that a company or corporation of power was interested in helping to join forces and collaborate with us. So we started off with a pilot where we would send pickup trucks to docking areas, and we would pick up that food waste from General Motors, coffee shops, breweries, and we would pick up that spent grain and those vegetables and take it back to the site And then the Detroit Zoo would deliver anywhere from like 1 to 3 tons of herbivore manure in their dump truck. They had this huge compactor truck. And so they would deliver that. And then we would process and make compost. So we really wanted to focus in the beginning, especially myself, on taking those key stakeholders, doing something positive, and aligning with them, but distributing that byproduct back into the community. So you have this closed loop model or closed loop system that's fueling, a local economy, but at the same time, we just happen to be, changing the carbon footprint because one, we're not sending the waste to the landfills, but also we're making a byproduct that the community could actually use and grow food, So the dynamic in that was, it was very spiritual. And what I began to understand as I was evolving as this activist, as I truly started seeing the connections between our carbon footprint on a day-to-day, but also how we could change the footprint of corporations. But more importantly, the impact that had on climate and climate change. Because after all, this was about climate resiliency. Everything that I wanted to be involved with, as a person of color, as a Black woman, I wanted positive reflections to the community, but also the bigger picture was impacting climate. I mean, at the end of the day, that's why we were doing this, and giving people a source of great fertilizer and compost. And then soil is a filter, it's a storage. So if we could produce huge volumes of compost, we could use those compost applications to remediate soils. Most of the people throughout this country who live in heavy industrial cities who are revitalizing have to bring those soils back, as well as other communities around the world. And it's important to have that topsoil. That's just one of the most important elements of the ecosystem. So as you can see, there's so many tentacles to composting that people don't probably think about, but the dynamic in it is all of the positive impacts that composting can bring, and revitalizing communities as well as healthy soil. So.
And one of the things that I definitely want to, reiterate and just amplify again, I mean, you've said this and we've had a conversation about this before. You can't have the food conversation without having a climate conversation because it's all connected. All the webs are connected. So I definitely just want to amplify that. But we are going to take a really short break and we'll be right back. HelloFresh offers convenient delivery right to your doorstep for easy home cooking with the family. With a variety of delicious options made available, you'll feel super duper confident in breaking out of your recipe rut to try new things. And since HelloFresh is committed to making fresh, delicious food available now more than ever, they have taken extra steps to keep its employees and customers safe, including no contact delivery, tamper-proof packaging, and team member wellness checks. Head on over to HelloFresh.com to start planning your next meal. You're listening to Perfect Day, produced by Artists Authentic. For more of Authentic's work, visit allornothingstudios.com. So, Pashon. So in composting in Detroit Dirt in your model, do you view composting or your business rather, as a solution, one of the solutions to addressing food insecurity and apartheid in urban areas in Detroit, in cities that are comparable to Detroit that have been experiencing the same issues when it comes to our food system. Do you view this as as a solution to addressing our food system issues?
Absolutely. Yes. Number one, compost is a nutrient based, fertilizer or soil amendment that is great for urban farming and for any resident or business to use for all of so many different reasons. One being, organic matter is just a better source than chemically based products. So definitely it's a solution when we look at the need for soil remediation, when we look at the fact that we deal with runoff and chemical issues that other corporations and others are using for their lawns, for, grass areas, farms. So composting is a huge solution because it stores water, it filters it, and it helps to remediate, and it creates a carbon cycle. When it comes to the BIPOC community, as far as people of color, I think that composting, as well as urban farming, empowers us as a people, all people, in fact. But in urban communities, we definitely have to push this movement because it's a way for people to empower themselves. If you're growing your own food, but you're growing it in the best way possible with the best nutrient-based products, the better off your health is going to be. And see, again, with climate issues, that it impacts everything, right? So climate change is about our health. Our health and the health of the soil are one and the same. What we plant in that soil and what we consume in our bodies, it's the most important fuel that we can give ourselves, right? But at the same time, if we're doing it in a way that is conducive or productive for the ecosystem, what better way to grow our own food? I will say that I don't see enough of us sitting at the table, having conversations in corporate, settings. It's starting to happen. There's a movement going on globally about social equity. It's definitely at the forefront of everything that I do. One, because I am a Black woman in an 80% plus populated city where it's important for community engagement and social equity to be a top priority with what I do. And so being a climate activist and being out here and fighting for, humanity as a whole, it's a way to bring people together. I used to have this mantra of everybody's connected to the soil, and we are globally. But the epidemic of food waste being sent to landfills, and 1 in 7, 1 in 8 Americans are food insecure, we have to create a different system. The antiquated ways or practices of the past, as far as throwing things away that are of value, and having these food banks that are looking for support as well as investment, we have a broken food system because we need people to pay attention to what those food banks can provide. And then if we divert the food waste and stop it from being wasted in the first place, we could feed more people. So I definitely think that our food system, there's a few epidemics that are going on with food waste, but more importantly, we have to actually educate the public on how to grow their own food, but also inviting the community and having them help to make decisions on, what's beneficial to them as well. So the equity piece is huge, but at the end of the day, I've seen the evolution of this, right? I think we've come a long way. We're making progress, but I would like to see more of our young people involved with the movement. I really would truly love to see that. But food waste, it's a problem and it's a solution if we practice and do away with all the antiquated ways that in which we've managed our food systems to begin with. Countries have built their economies off of the right agricultural practices, and that led to other economic benefits and impacts. So again, the soil and our lives are, aligned. That same bacteria that's in your gut is actually some of the same bacteria that's made up in the microbial community that's living in the ground. So, I try my best when I'm out here being the best version of myself to translate as much as possible with everyone on every level, whether it's academia or a resident, getting them to truly understand what the issue is around food waste, but more importantly, why is our system broken? Why are people hungry? And why are the indigenous and BIPOC communities not a part of these conversations? Well, now it's time to change the tide and shift in another direction because we have the solutions now.
So, well, first of all, amen, sister, because I wanted to say that a few moments ago, but I was just like, go, Pashon, go. Yes. Um, so, two things, maybe three. Some people know this, and I think you know this. Like when I first started, when I first got into this space, like I geeked out about soil because I didn't make the connection. I didn't know about the connection. And I said, oh my gosh, we have an entire like whole world underneath our feet that's so vital, to growing food, to just our environment as a whole, to curbing climate change. I mean, just that was a learning experience for me. And I geeked out about soil. So from just aside from like Pashon being like seriously like the dopest person ever, to just our Mississippi connections, my love for Detroit and like soil, y'all get the picture, right? But like I legit geeked about soil. And so I remember when I toured the facility where you all do your production, and I had my hands all in it, y'all, like all this just like black gold, just like feeling the soil, and it's so rich. And I'm just appreciative of your work because we do need to make more of that connection. We do need to do more educating, but also people do what they see, and so I at the beginning, when I was for real, like I was just like, who is this like dope like woman like about this mission? Like I need to see more of passions, like we need to see more of that, which brings me to my next point. When we talk about the thing that intrigues me the most about your work is that it's centered around humanity. You're not just out here, the business and the model just isn't about, okay, we need to, do something with this food waste. Is centered around humanity so people can have a way of life, so that people can have access to wonderful gardens and soil rich food, that people can utilize these soil amendments and do something with it that makes a way of living for Detroiters, like super duper better. When you started out and you realized that you were like in this environmental, role, or however you wanted to label yourself, environmentalist, climate activist, I'm curious to see how that definition evolved for you, right? Because we know, like you said, an 80% like space that's dominated by like white people, our white counterparts. So we see the hip. You hear the word climate activist, and I have done the plunges at the National Harbor. I have raised my money for climate change, and yes, I'm like one of the only sisters, like being a crazy person, like dumping my whole body in like an icy body of water because the issue is important to me, but it's not enough of me out there. But I am curious to see to understand how your definition of a climate activist and environmentalist has evolved, because, like, again, your work you care about humanity and people, versus we just need to reverse climate change, because our bees are dying, and we need to create more biophilic cities, but your mission is centered around humanity. So I'm just curious, if at all, how that has evolved and how that's continuing to evolve, and how you define yourself as an activist in this space.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think about it every now and again, a couple times, 2, 3 times a year, especially when the question comes up of the evolution of all of this and where I came from and where I am presently. I definitely have evolved into the person that I am, spiritually, more importantly, because when I started this journey, I was involved with waste and recycling and green infrastructure as far as green, like construction and principles. That's where I started in Grand Rapids, which is a 2.5 hour drive west of here. So growing up in Grand Rapids, and I left and attended HBCU, down in Houston for a while. And then when I decided to move back, Grand Rapids was investing hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure. They wanted to be one of the most sustainable cities. In 2003 and 2004, jumping all in and learning about sustainability because it was a buzzword and I had no idea. I saw it, sustainability, or witnessed it in business school from an economic standpoint. But when I moved back to Grand Rapids, my mind was blown because they were building a more efficient city, but inviting designers, construction managers, developers, general contractors. They were all coming together to create a vision around sustainability and building infrastructure, transportation, revitalization of land, buildings, you name it. So I started off there, and then I became a consultant after I managed some materials for a couple of green building projects, which were LEED certified. Then when I left, that space, I began to consult, and I started working with universities and workforce development around training, around job training. And at this time, Van Jones, Majora Carter, there were a few of us on the front lines fighting for green jobs. Specifically, Van Jones at that time was very inspirational for me. One, being a Black man, I didn't know too many of us who were in the environmental space fighting for green jobs. And so when the Obamas hired Van, right before that, I was consulting, and then, just kind of listening on the ground, keeping my ears to the ground. And we were like, okay, from an environmental justice standpoint, there's a movement going on. And so consulting, networking, that evolved to relationships with universities and colleges, helping them to create professional development for academia. And then when I left that space, because I spent about 2 to 3 years in each space that I was in to get enough information to inspire me to, phase into that next moment in life and time, where I could carry the tools and resources, from construction to consulting. And so what I noticed as well is after about the 6th or 7th year of lobbying a little bit in DC, National Wildlife, Sierra Club, Al Gore's Repower America, they sponsored me to go to DC and lobby. Once I figured out I didn't really want to be in that space because I needed to be boots on the ground working towards this mission. I remember getting invited to different universities back in like '08, '09, when I began to actually travel to start speaking. Some of the universities of today didn't even have sustainability programs. They didn't have coordinators or anything. So I've watched academia as well as corporations incorporate or implement sustainability plans. So when I first started this journey, it was about me learning what sustainability was and how the infrastructure needed an investment all over the world globally. And then from that, all the different transitions to different moments. And then we land at, the UN, the FAO, all of these different organizations began to push sustainable goals. And so I just started aligning with all these national organizations, and I built a network for myself as well and just started aligning. And then when Detroit Dirt evolved into what it is today. From a global perspective, having conversations, I started looking at, okay, now it's time for me to put back on this advocacy hat and start explaining and translating all of the benefits to, you know, life in general from a humanity standpoint, but from an ethical standpoint as well as the economics of this. Because today it's really about getting everyone to see the importance of, air quality, soil, and water. There's so many of us out here fighting for for human rights, from a social standpoint, but the evolution or how I evolved, into the person that I am today, it was just hard work, grinding. And then when you pioneer something, we're talking about a Black woman with, natural hair walking into corporate America saying, hey, look, you have an issue with your waste stream. People are kind of looking at you like you're crazy. 12, 13 years ago, they're looking at me like, what is she talking about? I'm talking about you're sending precious resources to the landfill, and there's a dollar or a value associated with that, right? So my journey was very interesting because I think I've touched pretty much every aspect of, the climate movement, with the exception of I'm not a scientist. I'm not formally educated in science, but the mere fact that I consulted with corporations. I am an entrepreneur. I've fought for environmental justice rights, for equity. I've pretty much touched every aspect of what climate resiliency is, and I'm staying humbled and keeping myself grounded, simply because I feel that, we have a long way to go, but those of us who have committed our lives to this, we have to come together, right? Because at the end of the day, the ecosystem is very diverse, but yet we as humans don't know how to embrace diversity. We're still very segregated in a lot of communities around the world, and it's time out for that. The only way you can have a climate resilient movement and truly impact and shift towards positive, change, is if we invite everybody to the table, because all of us have a purpose in this. But the most important message that I share is the ecosystem is diverse. How come we can't be? With our decision making and what we're supposed to do as humanity. I mean, we're a reflection of the ecosystem. So, the climate deniers out here in the world, we've seen them deny a multitude of things throughout history. But the truth of the matter is, these things are happening right in front of us. We can see the fires, the storms. What are we going to do to prevent them? What are we going to do to prevent them? Because that is our reality today. No one can deny the fires in California or the tsunamis in Asia, or the melting of glaciers. That's evident. It's right there. So you you can deny it all that you want, but the truth of the matter is it's happening, and it's happening right now. And we're in a crisis. We're in a crisis.
Y'all see why Pashon's so dope? Passion, so passionate. Y'all about to get me. I'm about to start rhyming on here. So I need to conclude, but I'm itching. I just have to ask. I'm itching to ask this question. So you got like 30 seconds. So what's next? What's next? We are it's still in the new year, but same pandemic. And I laugh because it's not funny, but it just is what it is. This is where we are. The amazing thing is that we've had a lot more folks garden out of this, right? Because we're going insane and being in our homes. And I'm talking like more Black folks are like out in the backyard. Moms are pulling their daughters out like, all right, this is a duo project. Let's get it. And this is just more of a fine opportunity for those. I mean, you know, in the climate that I'm in right now, you know, it's all snowy and stuff. It's snowing in Detroit, but for those who have a start, you know, this is an opportunity. I mean, composting is just an opportunity for everyone to get in, whether you are a grower or you know you buy groceries, produce, you know, all that other stuff. But with all that said, kind of rambling, but what is next, and what opportunities do you see out of everything that's been happening? Or is there, you know, where's the silver lining, and are there any, you know, like futuristic opportunities that you see that can come out of where we are right now?
Absolutely. I think education and awareness is the key globally. We have to constantly drive home the importance of climate resiliency and educate all of those who are interested and even those who aren't. And so, our nonprofit, that's what we're going to truly focus in on. I just filmed commercial with MasterCard. I'm filming another project with Pabst Blue Ribbon, and other brands are knocking at my door. So it's going to be important to build that bridge with all these brands and keep driving home the equity piece, as well as getting people to see the importance of inviting the BIPOC community, but also these brands, they have the power to change minds and influence, right? I don't like social media. I never have liked it. I'm not a fan of social media,
I'm with you,
but I
girl. But I've made a lot of
but
friends on it though.
yeah, yeah, but it's a necessary. It's one of those like necessary evils, because of the branding and marketing power of it. But
Absolutely.
what we're going to continue to do over the next couple of years is help to, you know, share stories of others, but as well as the culture of carbon. Culture of Carbon is our consulting company, and I'm just going to push news and information through Culture of Carbon and get people to understand this culture behind carbon and what we need to be doing. That's what's next for me, is working with brands, educating, you know, young people, and you know, getting people to pay attention to what they can do themselves. You know what I mean? So that's it. I'm advocating. It's a lifelong commitment, and that's what I'm here to do. And hopefully, you know, with all the brand awareness and opportunities, we can get brands to start promoting the mission and vision behind this culture and what we need to truly be doing as people and humanity, but more importantly, how we can sustain the ecosystem.
Beautiful. Passion, where can folks find Detroit Dirt online and social media? While we on it, sister.
They can go on Instagram. So I have two Instagrams. I have Detroit Dirt, the name Detroit, DIRT, and then Passion, Pashon, Murray, Murray. And both of them are on Instagram, Facebook, and we're also online at detroitdirt.org. And we're excited about Culture of Carbon. We're going to be launching that. So we already bought all the domains and all the,
That's
we'll be launching.
important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Culture of Carbon is going to probably be revolutionary, in the sense that Detroit Dirt was revolutionary of the beginning stages of my life, but Culture of Carbon is going to empower people and communities. So I'm excited. Yeah,
I want
yeah.
my t-shirt because I see that t-shirt just I see that clearly. I see that clearly. I want my t-shirt. Want my t-shirt. All right, so
Gotcha.
before I really let you go, we're going to do a quick rapid fire, all right?
Okay.
Ready? All right, sweet. All right, here we go. So, what is your favorite veggie or fruit?
Oh, wow. Favorite vegetable. Ooh, I would say greens. and onions. It's hard.
My girl said greens and onions. All right, there we go. There we go.
Fruit, pineapples, and plums.
Yum. Oh, yum. All right, so we're going to head over to the flavor profile. So sweet, spicy, sour, salty, savory, or bitter?
Sour, because that palate is for wine. I'm thinking of wine. Dry wines. So sour.
Oh, I'm not mad. I am not mad. Last artist or podcast you listened to?
Wow. Last artist.
And when I say artist, I'm talking about like maybe you were grooving to them moments before our show, an hour ago, or a podcast, what have you.
Yeah, so I I actually saw this little biopic on Lauryn Hill, and
Ooh.
yeah, I just happened to be on YouTube, and she just, to me, was like defying the odds, and with the singing, the hip hop, and
Absolutely.
she'll always go down in history to me as just being dynamic. So um that, I mean,
I'm just
her.
I'm blessed that I was just like really part of like that Lauryn Hill era. Like I remember when that album dropped, like Miss Education Lauryn Hill, like that whole era. I just she's phenomenal. But even before that, Fuji's. You know what I'm saying? Like Fuji. So
Absolutely. Ready or not. And she
exactly.
came for real.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. So who are you rooting for these days?
In what space?
Any space. It can be your mama. It can be your sister. It could be the neighbor around the corner. It could be all these other dope, amazing Black women. Like, who's just like in the forefront of your mind who you're just rooting for right now? It can be anybody.
I'm rooting for our ancestors at all times because
Mm,
they are always touching souls beyond our imagination. And my dream is, you know, Martin and Malcolm, they had the vision. And so we're living it now. We don't have any excuses. I mean, we can carry the torch now. And so I truly believe our young people, um, building that bridge. I try to represent a bridge of bridging young people to our ancestors, but they had the dream. And at first, no one in corporate America or anybody wanted us to be this Black, natural hair, authentic. Now we can be ourselves. I mean, so let's fight it out and get out here and do what we need to do. What better time than now? This is the first time in history I've been invited by brands to just be Pashon. They're not telling me who they want me to be. They're allowing me to be myself.
mm. Ain't that something? Wow. Well, Passion, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for gracing Edible Activists. You are alum. You've actually been alum, so just glad that we got to share your voice even further. Thank you guys for listening, and peace. Thanks for tuning in. You can catch today's episode on fullserviceradio.org, as well as iTunes and Spotify. Be sure to follow Food Talks in Color, that's just the letter N, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for all updates. Are you an edible activist? Sure you are. Come join me on the show. Just shoot me a DM on the gram or connect with me at foodtalksincolor.com. And if you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, let's connect. Peace and blessings. And remember, in the words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture.
There's no coincidence that there are a bunch of people who look like you and I who took care of farming. We are the closest thing to the soil. There's a reason why these dark people around the world are native to every land. There's a reason why they are the closest thing to the earth. Black, the color in itself, whether it's the soil, whether it's everything that's holding all these planets and stars above us, understand what the world is made up of. When you look at the science of all this, the soil is healing. It's a healing power. But if you eat whatever is coming out of the ground, it's essentially in you. What's in you is in the ground, and it's all connected. Water and soil should be the priority of anybody's agenda around the world. I want young people to be able to understand that agriculture is something that we are naturally gifted in. You can work in those areas and you can build whatever you want. For my legacy, I want to be recognized as someone who cared about humanity.